The fans have the choice. WWE brought out a very interactive feature with the advent of Taboo Tuesday in 2004. The opportunity to choose what type of match the wrestlers feature in, which title will be defended. Sometimes you can even choose the outfit the divas wore. As a kid, the concept felt like I had control. I remember WWE.com had all these options to choose and it was overwhelming. I distinctively remember at one point choosing Mick Foley for the special referee. With that said, Taboo Tuesday in itself didn't last due to, I'm assuming, the schedule of SmackDown. It was very unique having a pay-per-view on Tuesday, and in some ways it took away from this pay-per-view event, but nonetheless, WWE brought back the show in a different way. It was now Cyber Sunday. The brand split at this point was starting to ease up. More of the wrestlers appeared on the other show at least once a month. Raw guys on SmackDown, SmackDown guys on ECW. And with regards to Raw, WWE had a strong set of babyfaces on Raw with John Cena, DX, and then there's the likes of Jeff Hardy on the come-up. With that said, Cyber Sunday 2006 was held in the US Bank Arena in Cincinnati, Ohio on November 5th, 2006. 7,000 were in attendance to witness Kevin Federline making a joke out of himself, and the buy rate was 228,000, which was down from Taboo Tuesday 2005. Over 10 million votes for this iteration of Cyber Sunday, and the theme song for the show was Game On by Disciple. Okay, with that said, let's get into it. Okay, the first match on the show was Umaga against an opponent of the fans' choosing. Umaga was still undefeated up to this point. He was undefeated, he was winning all kinds of matches, beating the likes of John Cena, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, all these kinds of guys. He was bound to get a title shot. The three choices were Kane, Chris Benoit, and the Sandman. If you followed this story, you definitely know who won. Kane was banished to SmackDown by Umaga a month earlier, so it made sense that he won. Okay, Estrada tried to make a distraction but failed. The slugfest ensues with the Big Red Machine taking the slight edge. Umaga was able to hold his own though, and when overwhelmed, he dropped him with a belly-to-belly. Nice spin kick from the Samoan Bulldozer. Kane was making dents, but Umaga was more impactful with his offense. His way of doing things wasn't exactly in line with clean wrestling. He was raking his eyes, doing stuff like that, but he showed great athleticism with a headbutt across the ring. This was a one-sided beating. It wasn't until he attempted the Samoan spike that Kane finally woke up. Several shots in the apron, and in the corner, Kane was having his way. But all it took was a Samoan drop. Umaga gets overzealous again, and the Big Red Machine was ready to wrap it up. He knocks down Estrada, but Umaga capitalizes and drops him with a strike before hitting the Samoan spike to win the match. Solid stuff. This match though happened a couple of times beforehand, so it's not something we didn't see before. Umaga was a very standout monster in this era for his agility and ring intelligence, and Kane was usually paired with guys where he didn't show his best side, so this was a nice change. It of course wasn't neither man's best match, but it was a bit better than I expected it to be. Okay, Charmel tried to convince the Big Show to side with King Booker in the main event, but he refused to trust her and her husband. The next match was a fatal 4-way tag team match. Crime Time, Viscera and Charlie Haas, the Highlanders, and Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch were the teams. That Haas and Viscera team is some of the most random pairing I've ever seen, and the whole reason they paired was because Viscera turned down Lillian Garcia or something like that. The choices were here, and it was obvious what won. Texas Tornado. Cyber Sunday always had a choice that stuck out like a sore thumb. Do you guys want to vote for a ladder match, a submission match, or a count-out match? We all know what they're going to choose. Alright, with that said, everyone was brawling all over the place. Crime Time showed great teamwork. Cade breaks the fall. Rory and Robbie have their moments, but back in the ring, Charlie Haas engages in a strike fest with JTG, and off the ropes walks into a drop kick before rebounding with a released German. Big boot from Shad before Viscera comes in and causes chaos. Sometimes to his own partner. Kane and Murdoch finally have a moment and hit the high-low, but Crime Time pushed them aside and stole the win. Very average action. This match was built for Crime Time to win. There was no other option, especially because they just debuted and were hyped up as this new tag team with some unorthodox style, because these guys weren't really trained for wrestling and storyline. But about the action, I don't remember much from it. 4 tag teams is a positive because the action never gets dull, but I can't really say there was a team that stood out here. Then afterwards, Crime Time stole the King's laptop, a laptop he hadn't paid off yet. In the back, Shawn Michaels still has his issues with computers and was trying to vote for the referee in their match. Triple H made things easier for him, saying Bischoff claimed DX didn't know the meaning of controversy, and this caused them to go off the deep end. Stan, he got super kicked for simply standing next to him. Paper Guy, everyone was knocked down as Triple H looked on in amazement. Very memorable segment. What made it so good was that it was absurd. HBK lost his mind all because somebody claimed he wasn't controversial. Great stuff. The next match was for the Intercontinental Championship. Jeff Hardy defended the gold. Carlito, Shelton Benjamin, and Johnny Nitro were the choices. Nitro had been feuding with Hardy for a bit, so in some ways he was the favorite. But he was a heel, and Carlito was the face. Plus, the other two were fresh matches, so he got 13% of the vote. Now, if it was John Morrison, this would have been different for sure. They should have added a fatal 4-way option there, though. That would have been way better. Handshake at the beginning. and Carlito had a slight edge here. He was out wrestling Hardy, but right when things weren't going well, he kicked him in the patella. Hardy showed some aggression, avoided a springboard, and dropped him with a heel kick. The champion was fearless, but ended up paying the price as Carlito hit the drop kick on a flying Jeff Hardy. Back in the ring, Carlito with the rest hold. Fans try to rally on the champion, and it works for a few seconds as Carlito once again had him scouted. At this point, there was no constant dominant person. It was back and forth. Carlito tried to steal the match with the tights, but failed, and he wore down the champion and took his time in inflicting damage. The challenger took an entirely different approach. Rather than rivaling Jeff in the high-flying department, it was better to stay grounded and wrestle a more traditional way. They got him far. Jeff finally rebounded with a DDT and was starting to actually fight back. A brutal slam that got him a 2 count, and he decided to go up. The swanton wasn't to be as Carlito put his legs up and finally goes for his aerial moves. That wasn't enough for the win though. He went to the well one too many times and pushed Jeff into hitting the Whisper in the Wind. Still not enough for the win. Nonetheless, Carlito had the champion in a great position but screwed up the Hurricanrana, and so Jeff hit the swanton to win the match. Solid match. It was kind of disappointing in the beginning. What helped its case was that the moment where Hardy failed the swanton, from there it really picked up. I like the story with Carlito going in an entirely different direction. He usually climbs up the ropes, does high flying things a bit, but he deviated away from it here because Jeff was even better, and the moment he moved away from his strategy, he messed up. Earlier on, wearing him down, slams, strikes was doing him well. He played Jeff Hardy's game and paid the price. Good story, decent match. I'm sure it's not their best match together though, because they ended up having this ladder match a year later, which was better. Okay, the next match was a tag team match. D-Generation X faced Rated RKO. Edge's bitterness towards DX caused him to look for others sharing that same sentiment. Randy Orton didn't outright share that sentiment, more so contained it deep down. He held resentment towards Triple H since he harmed his career, and Edge did a great job of reopening that wound. In turn, it led to the forming of Rated RKO, a duo that wanted to dismantle DX because of everything they represented. Egotistical maniacs running around and taking over the show. In their eyes, if it wasn't Rated RKO, nobody would stop DX from doing everything they saw fit. DX, of course, made a joke out of everything here, and the 3 choices were Eric Bischoff, Jonathan Coachman, and Vince McMahon. Bischoff obviously won with 60% of the vote because it was a fresh situation. The other 2 had been feuding on and off for the last 5 months. Bischoff was a part of the NWO and never interacted with DX in the past. Embarrassing beginning for Rated RKO. Edge was getting his ass beat and doing nothing about it. He had to tag in Orton, and the game overwhelmed the Legend Killer with clotheslines and knees. He had no answer to this onslaught. HBK enters, they didn't know how to weather the storm, and Triple H in particular was dominant. Shawn Michaels tagged in again, and he's got all the momentum. Elbow from the top, he was ready to tune up the band when Orton dragged HBK into the post, all while Bischoff was oblivious. This was enough to open way for the heels to finally take control and isolate Shawn Michaels. Edge with a beautiful dropkick gets a near fall, and Michaels was desperately trying to make a tag out, but Edge had him right where he wanted him. Big boot, and Orton's in. Wearing down Michaels and locking him in holds did very well to turn the momentum around to Rated RKO's side. HBK was starting to awake, and Orton quickly shut it down. Edge though screwed up and accidentally speared Eric Bischoff. HBK capitalizes on this and finally tagged in Triple H. The game was fresh and ready to fight against everything that Rated RKO had to offer. The match was chaotic with no referee. Edge dropped him with a spear. Michael sends him to the outside and hits a crossbody. Inside the ring, Orton connects with the RKO. Ref comes in, but it's not enough. He failed to hit the second one and instead walked into the sweet chin music. 1, 2, no. Eric Bischoff dragged the referee out of there, and this distraction led to Edge dropping Michaels with the steel chair. Triple H was doing his best on the inside, but the odds were stacked against him. The ref, Edge, and the steel chair. Orton hits the RKO on top of the chair. 1, 2, 3. This was DX's first loss. Good match. It's not some special thing, but the pacing was on point. The story with Rated RKO biting a little more than they can chew early on. And I had no problems with this match, especially seeing it was their first match together. Eric Bischoff played his role very well, showing everyone what they missed. And it was almost a year since he left, but it felt like 3. But DX finally showed what they were capable of with a better tag team as opposed to the McMahons. That McMahon feud kind of affects the entire way this DX reunion was viewed, because anybody that talks about it always mentions that storyline first. Triple H was out of that Reign of Terror era where he was bloated and slow. HBK ironically was taking it slow and would explode in 2007. It was mostly a calm year for him here. Rated RKO didn't want to hear any excuses about the win, and Edge called Todd Grisham a chump stand. Out of all the words he could have used, he chose that. Good match. It was probably the best in the entire show. The next match was for the vacant WWE Women's Championship. Mickie James faced Lita in the tournament final. Trish Stratus's retirement had a huge effect on the women's division. Not just because of her retirement, but because WWE's entire philosophy changed after this. This was the beginning of the end. It wasn't even red hot before, but there was a little effort since Lita and Trish were around. That would slowly change. The choices here were funny because the woman already came out before the result was revealed. And yes, it did end up being the Lumberjills match. The Lumberjills got involved early on, and back in the ring, Mickie James was slowing down by Lita, who took her time on the offense. She struggled badly with Lita just going with anything she intends. Tilted World, Sleeper Hold, it took a while for her to actually fight back. There was an awkward moment here, and both women were thrown in. Another strange moment where Lita countered the DDT. Candice prevents the cheating, and a slight distraction from Victoria leads to Lita hitting the swinging DDT to win the title. That match was a bit weak. Watching Lita was more suited as a babyface in ring. Her as a heel takes away a lot when she wrestles. It's another story outside the ring though. I don't think it was their best outing. Matter of fact, it wasn't their best outing. Their match at Survivor Series was way better. But this one picked up a bit near the end. The involvement of the woman here and there on the outside, but there was clearly a little more they had to offer. It wasn't their night, nor was the Lumberjill stipulation helping. A regular match here would have been nice. In the back, there was some dissension with the Spear Squad. Kenny basically made himself the boss of the group and bragged about beating Ric Flair before humbling them. Nonetheless, his fighting spirit and strong mentality changed their own. The group were motivated to best Ric Flair. Okay, the next match was for the World Tag Team Championships. The Spear Squad faced Ric Flair and his partner. 3 choices: Sergeant Slaughter, Roddy Piper, and the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. The choices here were good. Hot Rod won this one though. Freebird rule, of course, with the Spear Squad. Piper and Flair, though, had protection. JR called Kenny the LeBron James and Flair the Michael Jordan, which was quite funny, especially looking at it now. The Nature Boy was overwhelmed with Kenny before tagging out. Piper was a little too excited and hyped to wrestle that he lost himself. Kenny's back in, and a double team with Mickie gives him a 2 count. That momentum he had earlier had nothing to show for here. Flair gets tagged in, has all the momentum, and locks in the figure 4. Kenny off the top, and that wasn't enough. The babyfaces though rebounded, and Flair locked in the figure 4, forcing Mickie to tap out and win the tag team titles. The Dream and Slaughter made the safe to send the heels running, and JR was in shock over this result. It was a strange decision. Match itself wasn't that interesting, but WWE wasn't really into nostalgia at this point, so this moment easily stands out. Flair and Piper, 2 of the all-time greats, capturing the tag team titles. The titles are forgettable anyways, so why not make a moment out of it? Plus, the Spear Squad had a terrible title reign, a title reign nobody remembers nor talks about because literally nothing happened involving the tag team titles. So it makes sense for them to drop the titles here. King Booker was getting desperate and asked for John Cena's help. The champ was cool. King Booker's like, "I'll see you at the Coliseum," which almost killed me. Now, wrestlers aren't right in the mind, obviously in storyline and sometimes in real life. Cena wanted to accept this, but wanted one night with the Queen. He got all angry, she got all angry, but once he heard one night, it was enough for him to say the dangerous word. Okay. King Booker was moving like he was the owner of No Jumper at this point, and the worst part is he beat the Big Show in the past. He's just eliminating one threat. He's still gonna have to deal with Cena, but Cena just wanted to mess around and see if he would actually accept. It didn't seem like that though to the Queen. Very fun segment. There's a great element about these segments from the 2000s. They felt more loose in some ways. And the main event, the champion of champions triple threat match. John Cena, the WWE champion, King Booker, the World Heavyweight champion, and the Big Show, the ECW champion. Who will be the champion of champions? That's how Vince said it. First of all, the promo for this match was hype. Second, this match came from out of nowhere. It was randomly booked on the Raw reunion show. And looking at it, the match was better suited for Survivor Series for obvious reasons, but nonetheless, WWE tried to bump the buy rates for these brand split pay-per-views, which weren't doing well at that time. King Booker's title was voted for, and he was pissed. 67% of the voting decided on King Booker's title because he was annoying. Let's be honest. As a kid, I hated King Booker more than the Big Show. My 2 most hated were Edge and King Booker, so it makes sense that he got most of the vote. They got rid of the King and wrestled. Cena was doing all he could to drop the Giant, but to no avail. The World Champion opted to watch from a distance, and off the rope, Cena walks into a clothesline. He was dazed and struggling. Booker finally enters and learns what John Cena did. Watching this match, Big Show was not up to par. The man was burnt out and clearly a bit out of it. Cena's involvement helped Booker fight through, and they got rid of him. King Booker tried to steal, but was unsuccessful. Chops from the champion only seemed to motivate John Cena, who was quickly stopped by the Big Show. Despite this, he hit a low drop kick that sent him right onto the steel steps. Back in the ring, Booker connects with a thrust kick, sidewalk slam, and Cena responds with a belly to belly. This didn't derail the King's momentum. He was trying to wear down Cena with the hold, and it worked initially, but he ended up being dropped. John Cena went all out with a splash from the top, but failed. Scissors kick wasn't to be, but King Booker rebounded with a DDT. Cena answered with a Russian leg sweep. These two are putting in the work while Big Show is taking a nap on the outside. The SCFU was quickly broken, and Cena used this to build momentum. That didn't work though. All of a sudden, the Big Show comes in, and a big spot occurs with King Booker connecting with a dropkick. They realized the ECW champion was a huge threat, but failed to take him out. Big Show was dominant. He dropped both men repeatedly and hit the chokeslam on King Booker before spearing Cena. He slammed him on the announce table and prepared to slam him to the post, but failed. Cena took advantage advantage and built momentum. He knocked down Big Show with a chair and hit the 5-knuckle shuffle. The title was slowly going to Raw. The Queen, Cena's like, fuck that Queen, and dropped her with an FU. And King Booker found himself in the STFU. All of a sudden, Kevin Federline, Britney Spears' partner at the time, ran in and blasted him with the title. Cena's all pissed, but he quickly ran away. This distraction allowed for King Booker to use the title and win the match. K-Fed taunted Cena while the fans booed. This sounds like a weird ass ending on paper, but K-Fed had some attention on him at the time. He wasn't no 2006 Justin Timberlake or Nelly Furtado, but he was on the news. He wasn't on the news as a main character, but he was on the news regardless. With that said, the match was decent. It was missing a little from being good, especially from the final act. It felt like it was heating, but they ended it. The biggest problem with this match is that Booker and Cena did well. Big Show, though, looked tired. He wasn't the same as he was a while ago. Funny enough, if it was RVD in there as the ECW champion, this match would have went a lot differently, but Cena and Booker did their best with what was given. Alright, that's Cyber Sunday. This show was very, very forgettable. To be honest with you, this show was not that memorable. There was only 2 matches on here that are a bit noteworthy, and even in those two's case, there's not much to say. Tag team match was good, but they topped it 2 months later with New Year's Revolution. Main event, decent stuff, you know, but it wasn't what it should have been, you know. The Champion of Champions was hyped up to be this big match, and it was never going to be that, you know. It was never going to be that big main event that WWE hyped it up to be. Other than that, the show, we can't really talk much about the matches on here because they don't stand out. And any positive from here is already topped, you know. Jeff Hardy and Carlito had a better match later on. Edge, Orton, DX, better match later on. Mickie, James, and Lita, better match later on. So it kind of shows the flaws with the Cyber Sunday thing. They weren't trying to make it as interesting as possible because the 3 choices they were given, for the most part, were very forgettable. If they went and put in more effort into the choices, the show would have been better, but it is what it is. Alright, what you guys think of Cyber Sunday 2006? Please comment down below. That's the first video. Make sure you hit the pedigree on the like button and perhaps the FU on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.